Welcome to Speculative Sandbox, your audio playground for creative storytellers. My name is Vickie, and in each episode, I and a guest will unpack a trope with an eye for world building, character development, or narrative structures. You can also join the conversation on TikTok and Instagram. For those times when the real world just doesn't cut it, let's get lost in a fictional one. So, Mike, what are you dressed up as right now?
I am dressed up as a wizard.
Very
Like
nice.
originally, it was part of a costume for a series of books that I used to read called Dragonlance. The character was Raistlin Magir. However, that requires a whole bunch of gold face paint and some contacts, and wanted to be a little more chill today.
All right. Well, you look wonderful. I am an evolution of Evie. This is from a family gathering. We all got these sets of a different variety of Evie. Do I know the history of the character or anything like that? No, but if you ask my kids, yes, they know. But that's what I am today. And the hood is a little bit, it drags a little my head a little. So depending on how my neck feels, I may or may not remove it. But anyway, Mike, I'm so excited to have you here today because we're trying something very, very new. This is the first time I'm doing this, and I figured if I'm ever going to be experimental about something, you're the best person to try it with. So
Word.
we are doing a watch podcast, and we're going to talk throughout the duration of the movie. In honor of Halloween, we're doing American Psycho, that classic crazy horror movie starring Christian Bale, and I'm very excited to jump into it. Are you excited?
I am excited. I'm almost through the book, and I've seen the movie before, of course, but it's a beautiful movie. It's a classic.
Yes, I have watched the movie several times. I feel like every time it comes back on Netflix, which by the way, we're using Netflix to watch this. So if you want to watch along with us, sign up into your Netflix and download or start the movie when we start the movie, and we'll prompt you. I love every time I watch it, I get something new out of it, and it's a great dark comedy. I think it's
Mhm.
hilarious, but I
Yeah,
understand if some people maybe don't.
it's definitely hilarious.
All
Uh,
right. And like you, I am also reading the book. I started reading the book a couple years ago. I had to stop for my neck injury, but I'm getting back into it. And that's also written pretty well. And for those that haven't read it, it's an interesting experience. There's a lot of focus on material goods and consumerism and brand names. And some people think that it drags in that regard. I think it's hilarious. I think it's funny. So, what are your thoughts on the book so far?
it is a very interesting book. Like you said, he is obsessed with this material. It was a feature of, the 80s yuppie culture. Like he's obsessed with materialism. Everything is like, what someone's wearing, where do you go to dinner, what of course the famous business card scene. It's just it really his obsession brings to light that whole aspect of the yuppie culture, and I love that part of the book.
And I just realized before we dive into the hitting press play, Michael, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them about you? They're like, who is this guy? But you were on the podcast before. You talked about conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I was on the conspiracy theory podcast. I am a friend of Vickie, aspiring writer. At some point, I'll get around to that. I'm in that whole analysis paralysis stage that lasts about 10 or 15 years. Um,
You're in the
but
research phase, though. You're doing things to,
yes,
yeah.
yes. Um, so I live in Vermont, so I am watching this in the future with Vickie.
Hmm.
Um,
We're on
and
opposite ends of the country.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'm just really looking forward to this. It's I love movies just in general.
Awesome.
I
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much for being on this journey with me. And I'm sorry, you were saying?
I was just gonna say that I one of my first jobs, as you well know, was working in a movie theater, and ever since then, I've just devoured movies consistently. And yeah, it's a great medium. Um, it, Different than books, but not no worse.
Sure. Same form of storytelling. All right, well, let's start diving into this one. Do you have it up and ready to go? We got
I
to time
do.
this. Okay, so I'm currently on the search screen, and if anyone else wants to look up American Psycho on Netflix, I'm on because what happens is if you go straight to the movie itself, it might start playing, and I didn't want to get too far ahead. So I'm on the search screen. You ready to go in?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm on the movie, but on zero. So
Okay, ready? Okay, three, two, one, play. All right. So let's get started. The movie's rolling. We got Gates film showing across the screen.
mhm.
Obviously, for licensing purposes, we cannot play the film we can't have the sound. We can't show what we're watching, but we can describe to you what we're seeing. So as this gets kind of kicked off, some quick notes that I wanted to kind of start with is I kind of, after watching this movie recently and reading the book, I can't help but feel there are parallels to Great Gatsby in the fact that it's a commentary on the wealthy, specifically in the 80s lens. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it de definitely with the focus on materialism, like the excesses of the jazz age. However, I think American Psycho brings a different lens to it in that they're obsessed with more of like the name of like everyone was wearing a suit in Great Gatsby, but no one cared what type of suit they were wearing, what the designer was and stuff, and which is obviously a focus in American Psycho.
All right, so we are in the opening credits right now, and we're watching a beautiful dish get plated, which is establishing the scene for Patrick Bateman. And I'm guessing this is one of the many beautiful meals that he eats at.
Mhm. Yeah, from the book, it's almost entirely spent in different restaurants, which is just I want to live that life.
Yeah, I
Fun.
know. Yes, it's very hoity-toity, very uppity. We have a waiter bringing in these beautiful plated dishes. So clearly they're kind of establishing food as kind of the entry point into relating and understanding this level of class that we may not all necessarily be a part of.
And I just have to get this out of the way. This movie would not have been made today. I
You don't
mean,
think so?
you have a British person playing the American Psycho. If that's not cultural appropriation, I don't know what is.
All right, we've got okay, he's with his friends. They're complaining about the restaurant. They talk
Hmm.
about Dorsia. This place is not like Dorsia, which Dorsia is a huge deal in the book too.
Yeah.
This an inobtainable restaurant that no one can seem to get a hold of, which I think is really funny.
Yeah, just like this new and hip restaurant. All the restaurants seem relatively similar from the movie, but it's just the fact that, that one is the new hip thing that it seems like everyone's aspiring to it.
Yes. Okay, so in this conversation, Patrick Bateman's talking to his friends. We've established a couple things. First is Patrick Bateman seems to be really interested in a specific account that he can't seem to get much information on, and that serves as a plot point for most of the book and the movie. But they also start introducing some really racist remarks to kind of establish where they stand as far as 80s white privileged racism.
Mhm.
But you made an interesting observation when we were having conversations. At one point, he mentions that it's an anti-Semitic remark. Do you think Patrick Bateman is a model citizen compared to his friends as far as progressiveness?
So he is outwardly progressive. He make like and whether or not you think the comments are made in jest, he still like at least throughout. If I remember right, he does it in the movie. I know he does it in the book. He makes several observations of like, oh, we need to protect all these people. We need to stop racism. He makes the show of all of these like professing progressive beliefs, but when you hear his inner monologue, it's anything but.
Hmm.
It he's as horrible as everyone else, if not
So
more so.
now we have Patrick Bateman at a club, and if I remember from the book, oh yeah, so here he is calling her an effing ugly bee, and that he wants to kill her and play with her blood, and she doesn't hear it. And
Hmm.
that this is where we start getting you know, the interesting mind games, I guess you can say, over what is real and what is not real. And so, one of speaking of tropes, we have unreliable narrator. In the
Yeah.
book and the movie, it's very similar, where he says the worst things that you think that he's saying out loud, but nobody responds as if it's true.
Yeah, but there's always an element of ambiguity in that. Like they're in a loud club. If you've ever been in a very loud club,
Mhm.
sometimes you can't hear the person that's talking right next to you. In fact, that's been my experience with all loud clubs. Like is is he really saying that and she's just not hearing him, or is he not saying that at all, or is he the movie leaves it up to question.
Now we're at the part where Patrick Bateman is doing his morning routine, which I love this scene. It's so unhinged. What are your thoughts on it?
You know, Patrick Bateman is kind of a model of self-care, honestly. Like he has I wish I had the time for this routine.
That's
And
true. So he's showering. He has an ice pack for his eyes, which maybe I should start doing that. He uses a deep pore cleanser lotion in the shower. He has a water activated gel cleanser, which I don't even know what that is, but okay. A honey almond body scrub, and on the face an exfoliating gel scrub. Okay, so this is where we're starting to see a little bit of that narrow attention to detail in
Mhm,
every single thing. And I'm actually surprised that they didn't drop brand names. And maybe there's only so many that you can do in a movie, but in the book, it's all about the name brands.
mhm, mhm.
And here's the symbolic part where he puts on a face mask, and now we've entered the psychopath trope, where it's coming up in a few seconds, but as he peels off the mask, it's symbolic. He's not just talking about his face mask, he's talking about the mask that he has as a person, which is the iconic scene right here.
Uh,
Such a good moment. And
mhm,
Christian Bale does such a good job. And I know that I'm sure most people listening to this know um, how he modeled this character after Tom Cruise, because
mhm.
Tom Cruise has a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. Um, that's so great.
And
Can you imagine working in an industry where you can just say something like that about someone else and like not worry about ramifications? You could just insult like a major movie star. No big deal.
and and the funny thing is Tom Cruise does a cameo in the book. He lives in Bateman's building,
Oh, I
up
haven't
in the
got to.
penthouse.
Okay. That's even better. I
Yeah,
love that.
he sees him in an elevator,
Oh,
and
okay. All right. Now here he is walking into the office and he's got headphones in. He's listening to him walking on sunshine. So now it's absurdist comedy.
yeah.
Um, it's everything about this, how he interacts with his surroundings and people around him, that he's listening to strange music, honestly, when it comes to his personality.
And but he is throughout the book, he is obs and throughout the movie too, he is obsessed with music, like in a way you wouldn't think of from someone who doesn't seem to have that many emotions outside of anger and rage.
Hmm. What's interesting is this story tells the story of a psychopath, but it uses a lot of, because the average person may not relate necessarily to the way the psychopath thinks and behaves. It deploys a lot of tropes that we can relate to. So, music being one of them, and food being the other. And I think that's a really interesting way to kind of surround this character with an ecosystem of things that we can kind of attach ourselves to.
Mhm.
All right, so here he is talking to his secretary, and he's telling her to dress more sexier, I guess, more feminine, wear a skirt, wear heels. Um, oh, heel and high heels. I like high heels.
Yeah, he would have been Me Too'd.
Yeah. Okay, and this gets me to something that so I was doing some reading about this, and this book is widely praised, I guess, as being a feminist book, which I found to be really interesting considering he is the opposite of feminism. But I think the existence of this story is supposed to be a criticism of the toxic alpha male behavior, including sexism, capitalism, competition. However, I think that, and I wasn't, I am not involved or know of the origins of this argument, and maybe that was the intention of the author, or maybe it was like a side effect of it. But to me, is is it feminist if it is encouraging the very behavior that is harmful?
So basically it's satirizing it. Like it's like everyone who saw like what was the movie with Gordon Gekko, yeah, Wall Street,
Hmm.
thing. Like a lot of people saw like, oh, this shows like the downfalls and pitfalls of capitalism and greed at any cost. And a lot of people on Wall Street saw that and said, I want to be Gordon Gekko.
Hmm.
So yeah, it depends on how effective the satire is. I can see it takes the whole like materialism and just insanity of the 80s yuppie culture, and it just kind of puts it on steroids,
Hmm.
um as a way of satirizing it. I can see the feminist critique, but there's a lot to unpack.
Now Patrick is at a restaurant with his wife, and we learn a couple things. Number one, it seems like nobody's faithful to each other, right? They're with another couple. His fiance, Evelyn, is supposedly having an affair. Patrick Bateman's also having an affair. Everyone's having an affair. So clearly their relationships are a bit disingenuous and shallow. Um, what are your thoughts on this scene as we kind of back up and take a look at his friends in a more casual environment versus when he's with his coworkers?
It kind of show like they all look very much alike.
Oh.
Like what it shows, like they're all dressed in like they're dressed in different suits, but they all have the same basic suit on,
Hmm.
and they all have like the slick back hair, and it just and they're all behaving the same. It just shows that it's a culture of conformity, and they like police conformity throughout the whole movie. Like in the book, they like Patrick Bateman, he can recite rules of like, oh, the shirt can, the tie can be worn this way and with these colors, but not this way, or you can wear a sweater like this. It's conformity, all of it.
Yeah, it's interesting too because he straddles different kind of social scenes. So he goes from the very yuppie kind of country club, French type, restaurant that it started out with, but then he goes to this kind of more cool hip restaurant, and then he goes to a club. He's all over the place. Uh, but do you think that he molds with those different places, or do you think that he kind of sticks with a very specific uniform?
I think it's a very specific uniform. That's my impression of it.
All right. So now he is, it's a nighttime. He's left his group of friends. He is walking. He just got some money and he is standing next to a woman in the middle, on the sidewalk. And, ugh, creepy. He says hello to her. And I actually forgot what happens here.
About
Um,
to find out.
does he pick, does he successfully pick her up? I know that there's scenes later. Oh, here we go. Some symbolism. Don't walk and walk.
Mhm.
Um, and then they walk together across the street.
If I remember right, doesn't she like speed up? Oh no.
Oh no, not this one. Or maybe in the book. I don't remember. Okay,
Oh.
now we have his
He's
absolutely terrible behavior towards Asians.
and he's trying to get something clean that's obviously covered in blood.
Okay,
Like,
yes, but no one seems to notice, right?
yeah.
So, um, I read somewhere that the author of this book, and for some reason I'm blanking on it. Let me look it up real quick. Do you
Bret
remember?
Easton Ellis.
Huh?
Bret Easton Ellis.
Thank you. Yes, that he apparently, Brett wrote this book because he walked around having these inner thoughts like this. And so he kind of put that experience to paper. And the idea that when you go through life and you have an internal narrator, and
Mhm.
there are times where your internal narrator presents a thought or an idea contrary to what you're actually experiencing. The book kind of blends the two. So what we're watching is more of like an experimental mind expression rather than a traditional story, I guess you can say.
Yeah. And I love like this woman walked in and he can barely remember who she is, but he immediately starts to use her to try to get his stuff cleaned because he wasn't communicating well with the with the laundry people. Which
That's another thing too, identity and memory. So, okay, right now we have Patrick Bateman talking to, I think, his girlfriend while watching porn in the background. But a constant theme in this movie is that nobody can remember who anybody is, and there's an identity crisis. He tries to pretend to be somebody else. What are your thoughts on that as far as just identity in this movie?
So you can see Patrick's like efforts at murder and all these outrageous behaviors as kind of a way to distinguish himself from everyone else who's just like the same person over and over again. He is trying to be something different. Um, in that way, is he a hero? I'm not saying maybe.
Is he a pick me guy? I'm not like other guys. I know like the other 80s yuppies, I murder people. Uh, that's funny. There's a scene and I think there's a scene in this movie that also matches the book where he is pretending to be someone else, and then his fiance keeps coming up and calling him by his actual name. We'll get to it at that point. But what I think is really funny from a literary perspective is the use of his name, almost like it's a taunting device. Like he doesn't like his name. He's not happy with who he himself is. He wants more. And I think that's really interesting that his own name can become something like poison to him.
Well, and also he's trying to hide the fact that he's murdering people.
Mm.
I guess he doesn't want to stand out as much just to say like, oh, well, at least at this point to confess to all these murders. That comes a little later.
So now Patrick Bateman is he's in a restaurant with his girlfriend Courtney, and he lies to her and says it's Dorcia, and he starts telling her what she's going to order, and I don't know if it even phases her because she's clearly a drugged up mess right now.
Hmm.
And here, so again, we're seeing that very close attention to detail of everything that he values as far as, well, it's not brand names, but I guess ingredients works. Again, we're with the food. And now we are and I'm guessing this is the boardroom, and he's back with his coworkers. And I
Hmm.
have got to say, Christian Bale, I keep forgetting that he's not American because he's,
The accent is so good.
it's so good. It's so sassy. Is this the business card scene?
Yeah, I think it's about to be, which in the book
Yes.
took place in a restaurant.
Oh,
I thought
that's
that was
right.
funny. But as a lawyer, this used to happen a lot more. Like I remember when I got my first business card,
Uh-huh.
I was comparing it to those of my friends, and there was there was some one-upsmanship.
Even like a soft eggshell with gently raised letters and little font differences like that.
Nothing to that degree. And of course, now no one has business cards because everything's online. So.
I know it's so sad. I actually forget to take my business cards with me, with my day job. I just tell people to find me on socials. Okay,
uh,
here we go. It begins.
mhm.
Someone extends. Is it Paul? Paul Allen? I forgot. I actually keep forgetting. Who is Paul Allen? Is it Jared Leto?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Okay, here we go. He pulls out the card. So basically, in this scene, Patrick Bateman and his coworkers are showing off their business cards. Patrick Bateman is the vice president of wherever it is that they work at, and they're all very impressed by him. And it's just, standard state of the run of the mill
Business
business
card.
card. And then
Yeah.
his coworker goes, but that's nothing. Look at this. And he
Uh,
presents his,
Good
and I can
old
see there's a little
David.
bit of texture, right?
I that texture looks awesome, by the way.
When
And
I
and
first
he
saw this,
starts to visibly sweat.
yes, which it's so funny that the way that you can feel valued in a workplace that's highly competitive boils down all the way to something like a business card. When I first saw this, I think I was in college, so like a little less than 20 years ago, I didn't really see the differences. But and here's the thing too, when this movie came out, we don't have gigantic TV screens like this. So we were
Yeah.
all watching them on little screens at home, unless you got to see this in the theater. I couldn't tell any difference.
Yeah. It's definitely better in HD.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, now here's Paul
Ah,
Allen's card.
good old Paul Allen.
The subtle off-white coloring, the tasteful thickness of it. Oh my
Hmm.
God, it even has a watermark, which I'm like, does it? Looking at it, I'm like, what? In the sense of a watermark, what does
Yeah,
that mean?
you can't really see a water like I don't think I've ever seen a watermark on a business card. How is that even
I
that must be above my pay grade. Um,
don't. Okay, now we have Patrick Bateman in his knight persona, and he's walking. And quite okay. Have you been to New York? Do they actually have steam like that? I hear they
yeah,
do. They do.
yeah, they do.
All right,
Yeah,
dark alleyway, steam in the background, great thematic effect. And I think this is where he comes across a homeless, an unhoused person. And this is so sad, with a dog
yeah.
too.
I almost stopped watching the movie at this point, honestly.
Yeah, it
The
is very evil.
like kill 10 or 100 people, that's fine. Murder a dog, that's
Hmm.
yeah.
So plot-wise, we are kind of at a point where everything we've seen has been kind of a subtext or hinted at, but this is the first time we actually see him commit an act of violence, which to me is a plot progression.
Hmm. Yeah,
It take Go
sorry.
ahead.
You see him be angry and say things angrily in his internal monologue. But yeah, this is the first time it comes to physical action.
Yes. So a shift in the narration, we start to realize this isn't about just a guy having fantasies in his head. He actually acts these things out. Um, and I think, I'm trying to think what I'm gonna, okay. We're pausing it real quick to get a timestamp. We're about 21 minutes in. We're about at the inciting incident, the typical, traditional inciting incident point. Um, And for us, it's us going, oh, okay. This is where we've entered the horror, the actual violent part of the movie.
Mhm.
So he kind of taunts this homeless man, which is awful. Why do you think he even cares?
I think it's that he doesn't care. Like he does like these are just it's not even a person to him. He can do what he wants to them. It's his expression of power.
And it seems like he starts small, right? These are people that society may consider invisible or that they don't care about as much.
Yeah,
Um, so for us, we're seeing him start out, even though he had blood on the sheets before, we don't know where that blood came from. But here
it
we
could
have
be
someone,
cranberry juice, like you said.
yeah. Oh, and the dog too. Taking something out on a dog, no one's gonna see or defend.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we're back. He's refining his mask. He's getting a facial, um, pristine skincare routine, as you were saying. And he says, I have all the characteristics of a human being: flesh, blood, skin, hair, but not a single clear, identifiable emotion, except for greed and disgust. Okay, so then he goes on to say something horrible is happening inside me, and I don't know why. My nightly bloodlust has overflowed into my days. Okay, so how do you think this portrays psychopathic characters?
Um, I think he has a lot more emotion than what would be the person I think about is Dexter, if you've
Hmm.
ever seen that show.
Yes. Yep.
It
Dexter is the serial killer of serial killers.
exactly. And one of the principal things of like motifs of that show is he has no emotions.
Hmm.
Um, this guy, he he seems to well, he has a lot more rage than Dexter does
Hmm.
in my view. I don't know.
That's true.
Um,
He has a lot of disgust, a lot of disdain. Um, Maybe he's a sociopath?
Oh,
Anyway, he's at the Halloween, I'm sorry, the holiday party, and he's with I forgot her name. Evelyn? His fiance? No.
yeah.
Is it? Okay. I forgot. Anyway, this is the scene that takes place in the book as well, where he at one point pretends to be someone else to Paul Allen, and it's kind of successful. He's thinking that it's going to help him get information to the account that he wants, and then his fiance comes up at some point and starts calling him Patrick. And in the book, it carries on. It gets kind of quite crazy.
Mhm.
But the entire time she talks, she keeps going, Patrick, Patrick. 'Cause I keep thinking of Reese Witherspoon's voice in my head. And that's where I just thought that was really interesting from a literary perspective if you're reading the book.
Yeah. And it's just amazing. Like they're so obsessed with like what everyone's wearing and what brand of hair care they're using and stuff. But to the extent that they consistently throughout the book, throughout the movie and the book, just mistake each other. Like
Hmm.
people call Patrick other people's names throughout the whole book, throughout the whole movie.
Now he's with Paul Allen in a Mexican restaurant. And what I find interesting is they make sure to take you on a little bit of a tour of marginalized communities, right? You have the Asian run laundromat, and now you have the Mexican restaurant. And what are your thoughts on how they kind of sprinkle different races and representation in this movie?
It just makes the yuppie culture seem all the whiter.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
every main character, every one of these, psychomaterialists are very, very white.
yes. Now,
Um,
I mean, we were very young in the 80s. How accurate? Now, this movie was made in the 80s, right?
no,
No,
it was
90s?
set in the 80s,
Set in the
made in the
80s,
90s.
made in the 90s. How much of, let's talk about the yuppie culture, the yuppie trope of this movie. What are your thoughts? Do you think that it's very satirical? Or what's the line between like, oh yeah, this is a realistic portrayal versus, almost a comedic exaggeration?
You know, like I was born in '85, so I don't have any real life experience on which to base this. All I can say is it's in keeping with a lot of the satirizations of the '80s yuppie
Mhm.
culture from other media. Another book, Bright Lights, Big City, um, which also is another movie starring Michael J. Fox. It says similar things about New York yuppies. Just
I know,
the
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I know that a lot of the clothes and the hair, my dad is an accountant. He's a CPA and he had his own firm for while when I was young. And I will say a lot of the hair and fashion choices look very familiar. Okay, now we have the
Oh,
famous scene. At this point, I'm not sure. I haven't really thought too hard about the plot structures, but now we are um, the first big act of significant violence. If you did not consider the homeless man significant, now we've entered into the realm where he's messing with his own network now.
yeah.
Um,
He's killing another yuppie.
he
Yuppie
is.
on yuppie violence here.
Yuppie on yuppie violence.
Hmm.
Also, what does yuppie mean? Where did that come from? Does that mean something?
I have no idea.
All right, so now he's playing It's Hip to Be Square. Um, it's not about the pleasures of conformity and the importance of trends. It's also a personal statement about the band itself. Christian Bale's performance is great. So now he kills Paul, but he wants Paul to see him as he swings the axe rather than just like killing him. And that's an interesting character trait. But now we have
Yeah.
him killing him very angrily. And like you said, he seems to have a lot of emotions for a psychopath.
Yeah. Like, do you think he wanted to see him because he wanted to be recognized as something different before,
Oh, yeah.
killing this man?
Yeah, I can see that. And now he has a new type of mask, right? The blood mask on his face.
Yeah.
That's quite impressive. I have to give makeup and props a lot of prop because of the way that it splashes on his face. I'm like, wow, it really looks like a mask. And he almost has a two face because now they're filming him from the angle that you don't see as much blood before panning to the wide shot and you see both sides of his face. He smokes a little bit. What would you do in this situation? I've always thought about this and I've seen different movies that do this. The events right after the murder when you're alone with the body. What would you do?
It depends on how much pre-planning went into it. Like, obvious, it doesn't seem like this guy plans much of his murders.
No.
Like, if he did, he wouldn't be carrying a bloody bag through a lobby. Um,
Yes. Also, look at the way he's carrying the bag. There's no way there's a body in there. A body is heavy, and
mhm,
he's hauling it around like a trash bag, which is like another hint of like, okay, was there even a body in there, you know?
mhm.
Which of course they're going to question. So he's stuffing Paul Allen's body in a garbage bag in the back of what was that? A taxi?
Is a taxi. And 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 what the person he's talking to, what he's concerned about is like, oh, where'd you get that? Like, like the duffel, not the body. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, carried. Oh, I heard that the brand that was mentioned in the book, and I'm forgetting names now. There was a brand in the book of which he carried the body in, and the brand in real life did not consent. They did not want to be associated with this film, so they picked a different brand that was fine with it. And I'm like, hey, branding, exposure is exposure. You know what I mean? I would have said yes.
all press is good press.
Okay, he's in Paul Allen's place and he is sending him on vacation. That's a really interesting strategy. So, and then
Mhm,
he stuffs all this guy's clothes like shit in the suitcase, a beautiful suitcase. I kind of
mhm,
want to get a suitcase like that. And then he leaves a voicemail. He basically pretends to be Paul Allen and leaves a voicemail.
mhm. And this might play a part in the end of the movie when he's talking with the lawyer and says like he saw Paul Allen like later
Hmm.
when he was on vacation in London.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. Okay, now he's listening to music in his office. And I remember watching this a couple months ago and I asked my husband, I'm like, what the heck does Paul do? And it's weird too because, not Paul Allen, I'm sorry, Patrick Bateman, because there's no computer on his
Now you're
desk.
confusing his name.
This movie's not good for people like me that have pays attention. Um, anyway, but there's no computer on his desk. Obviously, it's the 80s. But I'm like, what does he do? What did people do in offices back then with their little legal notepads? Just a
Yeah,
bunch of meetings?
yeah. It's funny how little his work actually plays, how little of a role his work actually plays in the movie. Like,
Hmm.
I guess we're supposed to assume that he works like on Wall Street, but it never really says. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's
All right. So his secretary, who took his advice and is in a skirt and heels, but he doesn't seem to notice, he's now being visited by the detective, played brilliantly by Willem Dafoe. Um,
Defoe.
with
He
the
plays
with
the
the
best detectives.
yes, and he has the perfect teeth. He kind of has vampire teeth.
Hmm.
All
When,
right.
when when I first saw this, I was thinking of Willem Dafoe in Boondock Saints as
Okay.
the same detective, like maybe a prequel to Boondock Saints.
All right. So there's an investigation. Donald Kimball, the detective, he's sniffing around.
Hmm.
People want to know where Paul Allen went, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, he's got porn on the desk? Interesting, interesting. Okay. So now the detective reveals he's been hired by Meredith to investigate the disappearance of Paul Allen. Um, I imagine a couple days have passed in a logical timeline. Oh, your
Probably.
doggy is on the screen. Hi, Missy.
Oh, uh, hi.
All right. So now we have Patrick Bateman sweating it a little bit. We need to figure out how he's going to handle this. So he's under investigation. I'm sure he hasn't really thought much about a cover story. He seems to be a little bit impulsive.
Yeah, he's flying by the seat of his pants. Not a good like, if you're gonna murder people and not get caught, this is not the way to do it, guys.
No, not at all. Also, I like that he put down a coaster for his desk before she set down the cup. And I'm curious if that's for, uh, vision, like coming off as clean and pristine, or do you think he's like a neat freak? I assume, yeah.
I'd say a neat freak. Although
Okay,
he didn't put a coaster under the bottle that came along with the glass. Like
interesting.
that condensates too. What the hell?
And the wood, I'm guessing the wood back then is just like, so so vulnerable to watermarks. Although I live in Arizona and things evaporate so fast. Okay. And that's so random. I went to Texas one time and they had water condensation on the table and they had to wipe it up. And that's when I realized it's so humid there, it wouldn't dry on its own. Anyway, who cares about water condensations? Moving on. So now we have Patrick Bateman trying to answer questions about where Paul hangs out and trying to come up with things because he doesn't really seem to know Paul.
Hmm.
He
Because
lists
they're all
off
the
and
same.
sorry, go ahead.
Because they're all the same.
Oh,
Like
that's true. Now, I haven't gotten this far in the book, but you have, right?
I actually just got to the point where the detective comes into the office. Like that's as far as I got so far.
Okay.
Um, so yeah. And honestly, it is impressive how fast they got here because we're only what 35 minutes into the movie, and like this is about three-quarters of the way through the book.
Mm. What I like about this scene, if you're looking at it from a like a suspense perspective for the writers out there trying to figure out, how to make things more entertaining or suspenseful for their
Mhm.
readers, you can't really tell which way Willem Dafoe's character is leaning.
Mhm.
He comes in very much like through Patrick Bateman's like lens of paranoia and suspicion, and then at some point he almost like starts leaning into friendship. Do you think that was a strategy, or do you think that was genuine?
Like a little bit of good
Oh
cop
yeah,
seem to be bad cop.
yeah,
I don't I always I saw it as he's trying to as he suspects Patrick. And yeah, that was my read on it, but I could see the other way too. I mean, Patrick Bateman's a rich guy. Maybe he just wants to, get in with the yuppie class.
that's true. There's a benefit to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now Patrick Bateman wants to get out of the situation, and he's gonna go meet with a friend, and the detective is kind of picking apart his little excuse.
I have to go return some videotapes.
All right. So the detective tells Patrick Bateman, if you have any other further information, let me know. And he says goodbye. All right. And that this little interaction is concluded.
You know,
And Patrick, hmm?
they probably put this scene earlier to make it more believable because like by this point in the book, he'd killed many people. And
Mm-hmm.
and they strategically put this out after like the first time you see him kill a yuppie. So
Ah,
you kill a yuppie, you get a reaction.
that's true. All right. Now he is back to his routine of working out in his center, but he's in what's supposed to be a peaceful environment. He has horrifical screams in the background. Um, it's like he relaxes through violence.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have the
The
scene where
problem.
he picks up uh, a woman of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I remember reading this scene before that, like, I haven't gone to the detective scene, but I've read this scene, which
Yeah.
is he shows up with a driver, no less. So there's a driver because he's in the back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
driver drove him, which who is this driver? Where did this driver come from?
So in the book, if I remember right, he he took someone else's limo and he
Mm-hmm.
was pretending to be someone else. And then he had them just go to a place where he knew there'd be prostitutes because he'd watched this particular prostitute before. But yeah, this is once again, if you're gonna murder someone, don't do it like this. You're literally bringing a witness with you in the driver.
Okay, so now he's got the prostitute in the back of the car with him.
Look at the car phone. The car phone. It's
Yes.
a brick.
Kind of like what Zach in Saved by the Bell would use,
Yeah.
which is what I was watching back in the day. Okay, so we talked about this scene actually. And okay, so he brings this woman to his place, and at some point he calls an escort service and gets another woman. And what proceeds is a very uncomfortable interaction between them, social interaction, followed by a very graphic sex scene in the book. And the
Mhm.
book is way more graphic than what
The
you
book is
see.
essentially a penthouse letter.
It
Like,
sure, it really is. But okay, so as I'll start talking about this now because the scene will take a while. Um, the reading the book, it is very clear that Patrick Bateman, and in here too, kind of freaks out these women. But these women, under obligation of their jobs, are there. Also, they've been brought to a different location. You know what I mean? They're kind of stuck.
mhm.
And I suppose they could leave, but I'm sure their income hinges on their ability to, leave. And this woman in particular, the prostitute, has a pimp. It's implied because she was looking back when he picked her up. Um, they're not very forthcoming with him, right? They don't really put effort into the social time. Um, but when it changes to the sex scene, it is so over the top enthusiastic that I cannot help but think that is an example of when we leave reality and we enter his head and he becomes the fantasy that he sees all the time in porn. What are your thoughts?
Unreliable narrator. Yeah,
Hmm.
I believe it. Like I said, it there is an aspect, I assume, to sex work that makes you want, like, they're probably well schooled in faking it,
Hmm.
like, in putting on a performance for their client. So I think there's some of that, but the way you're right, the way it plays out, it's essentially a porn.
Yeah.
The,
Okay, so we have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
and I was going to say, and they're obviously very uncomfortable right now.
Hmm.
And to go from this level of discomfort to porn is like it's breakneck speed.
Yes. Yes. For anyone who hasn't read the book, that's a very interesting. Okay, here's something else that's interesting too, is that it gets so graphic with the sex scenes, but then the subsequent violent scenes fades to black, just like this movie does,
Mhm.
which I thought was an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now I'm sorry, were you gonna say something before I?
No, no,
Okay,
nothing important.
so now we have Patrick whipping out the music, got a little bit of Phil Collins,
Yeah.
which it
You
certainly would not get me in the
yeah.
mood. Okay, he starts talking about the 1980s album Duke. He starts launching into this thing. Why do you think why do you think music means so much to him?
That's kind of a mystery to me. I honestly have no clue. Maybe it's just like the emotion that music is supposed to provoke that he like knows that he lacks to some extent. Like he
Oh,
knows that, I don't know. Maybe I'm just pulling
no,
this
that's a
out.
really good point. I like that. Okay, so now he's brought the girls over to his bed, and what's really interesting about his place, I'm looking at it right now, is it's white. It's so white. There's so much white. Like,
And isn't this Paul Allen's place?
that's a
I
good
think.
question. I wasn't sure. It seems really nice, but I didn't know if it was his or not. Oh, good question. Where are we?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are, nonetheless, he's got a video camera and he's going to film them doing things. I'm just amazed at how these women are just so like okay with him whipping out a camera and they don't really say anything and they just start following his orders. Again, very like lackluster. The emotion is clearly not there.
Hmm.
Um, it's a very uncomfortable scene, and I can see how this is kind of where I'm like, okay, the feminist lens of this movie is it doesn't shy away from how uncomfortable this is for the women. Like it
Hmm.
is not a fantasy in its portrayal. But then it's immediately followed up by like obscene. So like while we're trying to be teaching a lesson, it's also, as you were saying, kind of encouraging a certain mindset or actions.
Yeah. That's
Anyway, all right, so he's talking some more. This is a long scene. I forgot about how long this was.
what she said.
Okay, so now we have a very uncomfortable three-way that's going to happen. And I'm trying to think from a horror perspective, why do you think sex always seems to play a big role in horror films?
Like the emotions, the forbidden nature of sex. Like in horror, like you can always tell that like, oh, the first teenage girl that has sex is going to be the one that dies. Um, Maybe
Well,
that's an
yeah,
American thing. I don't know.
that is very true. A very puritanical mindset. I think It Follows was a horror movie, and I think I've talked about this before, where you literally transfer this demon by having sex with other people.
Oh yeah, I love It Follows for that exact reason. Like like the monster becomes a sexually transmitted disease, and the only way to get out of it is to have sex, which completely inverts the trope.
Yep, that's very true. Okay. So now the sex scene is over and he wakes up and this is where things kind of start to take a little bit of a turn for the worse, but not complete worse because he doesn't do anything permanent to them in this portion of the story.
Yeah,
Um, but
it's
he it's
it's
important.
very ambiguous what happens now. I mean, you know it's violent, but you don't know what exactly
He
goes
slides
on.
up in a drawer. He's got all these weapons. So that's the question. If we're at Paul Allen's place, would Paul Allen have a drawer of those things?
Oh yeah. Unless he was there, unless he was there before, and like, was this where I don't even know where they are right now. You're right. I have no idea.
And maybe it's supposed to be
And
confusing, right?
and now she has like marks on her and nose is
Hmm.
bleeding. Although this is the '80s, so it might have been because of the coke. Like,
That's a good point. All right, now we're right back. He's putting on a performance with his coworkers in this gentleman's club environment, although there's a woman behind them, so maybe it's not a gentleman's club, but oh,
what
hard
one?
body. What a
Yeah,
word. That's all over the book. He calls everyone, like women, hard bodies.
yeah. Only the attractive ones though.
Only attractive ones, which I looked it up and it's meant to mean someone with an attractive body that is athletic, firm, literally hard. And I thought it was just so funny because I haven't actually heard that term in real life. Have you?
I have heard it in Always Sunny in the
Oh,
earlier seasons. The character Mac refers to one, a few women as hard bodies. Women who go to the gym and such.
okay.
But
All right.
I think she might be the only woman in the room, the one right above his shoulder, right there.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, there's one at the bar as well.
Okay. All right. We got, women breaking barriers and
Yeah,
entering new places back in the 80s. All right. So now we have what's his name? Lloyd? I forgot this guy's name. He looks like a Lloyd. No, Lewis.
yeah, Lewis.
He presents his business card and everyone's kind of indifferent to, oh, look at that. He's caught color.
Oh yeah, gold.
And I can't tell if they like it or not because he doesn't seem as intimidated by it or bothered by it.
And she's also the only one wearing a bow tie, which I thought was a little weird.
The woman behind him?
No,
Oh,
he's wearing a
Lewis.
bow tie. Everyone else is wearing like the regular tie.
Oh, that's true. Very nonconformist.
Yeah.
Maybe hinting at the fact that he is an LGBT, he's a gay man in this
Yeah.
story.
And something that was in the book that really doesn't make it too much into the movies. Like it was a very big focus in the book that this is the '80s. This is the beginning of AIDS epidemic and or the prevalence of the AIDS epidemic. Um, they were very concerned about issues of like, oh, protection. They have a whole conversation in the book about like, oh, I heard that white men can't get it or something like that. And it's oh, but let's just pay attention to this scene.
Yes. We have Patrick Bateman follow Lewis into the bathroom and starts to put his hand around him to strangle him. And Lewis mistakes the, the
And it
intimate.
throws him off. It throws him off so much.
He like takes his leather gloved hands and puts it around his neck and starts talking about like how he's kind of always felt this way and he washes his gloved hands. He's like so turned off by this, but he doesn't kill him. Do you think it's because it's just he's so shocked?
He is off his game.
He has to go return some videotapes. There you go. I love this. This is very classic old Hollywood style right here. The
Mhm.
lighting, the even like the screeching violins in the background as he's trying to run away from Lewis, and Lewis tells him,
Ah.
"Call me." The lighting's gorgeous. I love this movie for that.
It's probably the worst thing Lewis could have done to him, and it was
Yeah.
so beautiful.
Okay, he's back in his high-rise office building, which we still aren't quite sure what he's doing. Mergers and acquisitions, or or was it
Or,
murders
or
and
just executions.
executions? All right, the detective is back, and we're revisiting the night of Paul's disappearance on the 20th of December.
This would really work as a Boondock Saints prequel. Like,
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're both set in New York. He's still a detective. Um, yeah, maybe we should do that one next as like a spiritual sequel.
That will be fun. I have not watched it, so I will be learning a lot. Okay, so now we're revisiting, and this is the second time that the detective is here. So, from a writing perspective, there has to be some evolution, or else it feels like we're spinning our wheels.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh
so
yeah,
let's see.
this is after he checked on like the alibi that
Uh-huh.
he gave, right?
Yes. Okay, so then he wants to schedule more time with him. I'd be a little creeped out right now if I was Patrick Bateman because
Hmm.
I'm like, where exactly is this going?
Hmm.
Okay, so the detective asks him if he can try and pin down exactly where you were the night of Paul Allen's disappearance. It would make my job a lot easier. And Patrick Bateman is agreeable at this point. Um, and then, and now the detective is talking about Huey Lewis and the news. What are your thoughts on is now remind me because I'm not the biggest music person. Have we already heard about Huey Lewis and the news, or is this a
I
new?
I honestly don't know.
Okay,
I Yeah, the only experience I have with Louis Hewis in the news was an offhanded reference to them in a Futurama episode. Um,
okay. I guess this just reveals our age.
yeah,
Okay, no
sorry,
worries. So
Gen
Patrick
Z.
Bateman is now with his girlfriend. So I find it very interesting. Okay, so he's got different women in his life.
Mhm.
He's got whatever her name is, and I'm forgetting. It starts with a C. Courtney. Um, and then you have Reese Witherspoon's character, Evelyn. I don't know why he doesn't kill them, because he clearly doesn't care about whether or not if they're like lower class or yuppie upper class.
I think that maybe they're part of his cover, like
Mm,
or not really his cover, but more of his presentation of the yuppie lifestyle.
hmm.
Like, she's the girl that he is probably going to marry and resent in a few years. So she still needs to be there, or he'll have to find someone new, which is probably something he just doesn't want to do.
My guess was in Evelyn's case, I was like, she must be like a stepping stone, right? So she's really annoying to him, but he won't kill her because he needs her for something.
Yeah, or maybe she is from enough money that he would have been hunted down if he killed her. Like she maybe she's rich enough that she would create a stir if she left.
Oh yeah, okay. That's a good point. It's also interesting how, and maybe this is also another feminist kind of note. He he relies very much on women for
Hmm.
for something, you know.
I mean, yeah, a woman who he barely knew was the one who helped him at the laundry.
Hmm.
Like th this one, yeah, yeah, I agree, I agree.
Yeah, he's got his the woman on the side, and then he's got the fiance. He needs them for something, whereas the men in his life he seems to be more at odds with.
Hmm.
And I do feel like this could be a feminist note because I think a lot of women can make a similar observation that men have a harder time opening up to each other, and so many times the woman is what's is getting exposed to his more vulnerable sides.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, okay. Were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
I was going to say one scene or one character that I'm surprised they left out of the movie after I read the book, or that after I, got into the book. Um, they in the book he meets with his college girlfriend, and like he's obviously she has him wrapped up in knots, and at the end he ends up killing her like viciously, and then cutting out her tongue specifically, which has a whole bunch of layers of, power and
Mhm.
misogyny to it. But yeah, I'm surprised they left that out of the movie. Well, not really surprised. I can see how that might have gone from an R rating to an NC-17 or whatever. But uh,
That is interesting. Maybe, and I haven't gotten to that part yet. Maybe it's one of those things where now you had a lot of women players kind of
mhm,
evolving around this character, and maybe it was they thought it was too much, at least for the
possibly.
simplifying it for the movie, I suppose. But that's really interesting. You also told me that he meets his brother, like he gets to know
Yes.
his brother.
So yeah, his brother Sean Bateman, who actually has another book and movie based upon him, Rules of Attraction, which came out. I think the movie came out a couple years after this one did. Um, yeah, and his little brother is so they hate each other, of course, but his little brother is so much cooler than he is. Like he gets into Dorsia because he knows the chef. Like
Oh,
that's the level of cool that we're talking about here.
okay,
Uh,
so now he's at a club, and when they just talked about murders and executions, which actually, what's really funny, and of course it's murders and acquisitions,
yeah.
is so my husband trades stocks, and my daughter, when she was very young, and she asked him, "What do you do?" And he told her, she thought he said socks. So for a while, she thought he traded socks, which is it's awesome.
I mean, some socks are very valuable. I have a pair of pug socks that I would not part with for the world. So,
Okay, he is now getting into the limo with. It's so
taxi.
funny. With who?
Isn't it a taxi?
Oh, sorry, you're right. He's getting to a taxi. And I feel like he's dressed like Paul Allen here. Look at
Yeah.
the pattern on his shirt and the tie. It feels very Jared Leto from the back. Okay, so now he is
And
doing
he
the
had a
crossword. Hmm.
and he had a piece of her the what looked like the woman's hair from the
Oh, wow, I completely breezed over that. Okay, so he got into a limo with a girl, and we can now make the assumption he did something to her, which is why he has hair, her hair.
yeah.
Okay.
And he was completing the crossword with the NY Times crossword with just like meat and bone.
Yes. No, he totally looks like Paul Allen here. I feel like he's
Yeah.
stylized more like him.
Mm.
Um, he just looks like Jared Leto. All right, so he's talking to his secretary, and now he's entertaining the idea of taking her out, which puts all of us on edge because she's this innocent.
Yeah.
She's the innocent archetype.
You can tell by the bangs.
Yeah, okay, the bangs. He's wearing sunglasses inside too.
Yeah.
What a
I,
douchebag.
I'm I'm really glad that suspenders aren't a thing anymore.
Really? Do they really hold your pants up, do you think? Or is it just a style choice?
I think it's a style choice. To each their own. I'm not, if you like suspenders, good on you, and wear them if you want them. It's just something I never, ever could get into.
I actually
Ever.
bought a pair of suspenders because I wanted to see if I can make it work, and it just gave me wedgies. So I have one pair, and they have not gotten very far. All right, here he is with his awesome brick of a phone, and he's trying to get. Oh, he's pretending to get a spot booked because does she want Dorsia too?
Yeah,
Um,
everyone wants Dorsia.
and is Dorsia a real restaurant? I've been meaning to look
God,
that
I
up.
hope not. You know,
Um,
I am sure that after this movie, someone made it one. I'm not sure. It probably didn't last though.
Dorsia, New York. Okay, here I am looking it up. Dorsia.com, a members only platform with access to coveted reservations at the most in-demand restaurants in New York, London, Miami, etc., etc. But that's a Dorsia.com website. However, is Dorsia based on a real restaurant? And this person says it is important to remember it is purely a creation of fiction.
Hmm.
But Dorsia is used everywhere. Here's another website. We only make money when you make money. No financial commitment up front, no hidden fees, etc., etc.
Oh, someone's head in the freezer. That's the girl.
Okay, now we know what happened to her. All right, so he brought this poor innocent. She's so cute, and I love her dress. Very flattering for her
Hmm.
skin tone. Um, they're in the same place, and as you said, there's a head in the fridge. Very
Hmm.
nice industrial level kitchen, by the way. He just said that she could always be thinner. He's such a jerk. Okay, so now
You
they're
know,
trying to figure out what to do.
one thing I like, all of these homes, they have these beautiful kitchens. I never you never see anyone using them. If I had a kitchen like that, I would not go out.
Oh, true. I love it. Well, that's because we're working class, Mike. We are not yuppies. Okay, this is Paul Allen's, right? He's been okay. This answers the previous question because this is where he killed Paul Allen before in this room,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so he is this pure white room. That's where he's taking prostitutes and all that stuff.
Oh, I love the fact that he had in the background you see a a a glass why am I blanking on the name of that? Like for the stars.
Oh, the telescope.
Telescope. Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. I kept wanting to say spyglass. I knew that wasn't it. The spyglass, and it's not for seeing stars. It's for looking in other people's apartments.
Y yes, because they're in high rises, right? And they could look across the
Yeah.
way. If you were in a high rise, would you get curtains?
Oh, definitely.
You would.
Like I don't like people seeing in my house now when I'm on the ground floor. Yeah.
Okay, so now he is kind of puttering around this kitchen looking for tools of destruction here. He's talking about Ted Bundy. He clearly loves his serial killers. And this,
At least he's well read on the subject. I mean, if you're gonna do something, commit to it.
I suppose so. He's got a lot of time too, because he clearly doesn't work. He just he just meets with people and sits around. So I guess he reads up on serial killers and
Mhm.
listens to music.
Like, so is this also a satirization of like just corporate America? I mean,
Oh yeah.
all these people have jobs where they make a lot of money, but no one seems to do anything.
Yeah, I can see that working. And that's why I also found this to be so similar to Great Gatsby in that it is picking a genre to criticize the wealthy in this particular setting of New York
Mhm.
during the 80s in a way that shows how destructive they are. Um, oh gosh, now where the heck did that come from? And so he's a nail gun? Is that a nail gun?
It is a nail gun.
A pressurized nail gun, which, every 80s, upper class yuppie has in their kitchen apparently.
Ugh. And it's gigantic too.
So he
Like this,
stops.
it's
Hmm?
like the cell phone, the 80s cell phone of nail guns.
So here's what's interesting. Evelyn's calling him, but he's in Patrick's house? Or not, sorry. He's in Paul Allen's house?
I mean, they all are sleeping with each other, so like everyone's sleeping with everyone else
Oh, is she
apparently.
calling Paul?
It
Wait, who's
could be.
she call? It's hard to talk and watch at the same time, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So it's awkward because the this poor secretary um is kind of in an awkward situation because she's calling Patrick. Okay, so I need to wrap my head around this. I might need to
Yeah.
revisit where exactly they are. Um, so she's like, weird. Well, that was your fiance, and what does this mean for us now? I thought we had something. And now he's like disgusted. What's going on here?
He's ashamed. I yeah, definitely ashamed. I think part of his mask gets lifted up and yeah, I don't think he likes it.
He also sees her differently than he sees everyone else.
Yeah.
He even confesses to her right now, I don't think I can control myself.
Hmm.
Um, and she, of
And
course, misconstrues it, but he saves her. from himself.
So once again, is he a hero?
Are
He
you a
saved her life.
hero if you're saving people from the crimes you're committing? Then if so, then then I guess yes. Why do you think he sees her so differently from everyone else? The
I think
secretary that seems
I,
pure.
I think just because he interacts with her every day, and also she is completely separate from the yuppie culture that he is involved in. Like I think he sees the other people like in the other yuppies as completely interchangeable, just the
Mhm.
way they see him. Like they mistake each other's identities. There's nothing new or unique about them. I think in the secretary, he sees something unique that's not present in the day-to-day that of his social circle.
Well, and I think what also saves her because he doesn't care about working class people of other races, but she's white.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
And they even portray her as angelic, right? She's got very like her hair is natural, her
yeah. Hmm.
face is natural compared to some of the other characters. She's in a light colored beigey, but you could argue all of the cream white variety. She's not overly decked out. She kind of has this angelic, purposefully angelic style. Okay, so he lets her go, uh,
And
and
now he's
now,
meeting with the detective.
yep, he's meeting with the detective. And the detective seems to be taking him on as like a partner and kind of asking for Patrick Bateman's advice
Yeah. Like that, which is exactly the position you'd want to be if you were the murderer.
to help
Um,
the detective.
yeah, to help the detective find you. Like, how do you think that's going to turn out? Yeah.
That feels like such a classic mystery novel plot device
Mhm.
where like the friend you think is closest to you ends up being the very person who did the crime
Yeah.
because the betrayal is so much fun. Okay, so now Paul's trying, or not Paul. I am no better than a yuppie. All right, so Patrick Bateman is confused but with his schedule and he can't seem to keep everything up. And the detective reveals that someone suspects that maybe Paul Allen was killed, but that's too ridiculous, right? And he goes, "Isn't that right, Patrick?" And then right away you're like, he's on to him. Um, and you got this great moment of suspense. And so what does Patrick do? He just goes and kills. He's on his way now to kill someone else. So he's back in the town car, right? Is that a town car? I feel like that's correct.
Yeah, it looks well. You could maybe a short limo. I don't know, but it looks kind of like a town car. You're right.
He's got the
I
same driver, maybe a different driver, who knows?
Once again bringing the witness to the crime scene. It just doesn't make sense.
And he's picking up on the same woman. And I'm just shocked she went back. But I think it's, when you're when you're not well off, perhaps you're making the assumption, and he
Yeah.
dangles money in front of you, and maybe you don't have another opportunity. You find
This is
yourself in
all
situations.
this is all the reason why sex work needs to be legalized and regulated. Just putting that out
Mhm.
there. Give her the
It is
protection
in
of
some
the law.
places, right? Like in Vegas or
Yeah,
Nevada.
yeah, yeah.
All right, this poor woman, she's so scared. Um, and I haven't gotten to this part in the book yet, so I can't speak to how have you?
No, I have not. No.
Okay. All right. So you and I are semi knowledgeable between movie and book, but now we're in kind of unknown territories here.
Hmm.
So he takes it, he's writing her a check and oh, she's leaving. I forgot what happened here. Oh, but then he follows. But that driver, man, that driver's an accomplice. He's following behind, literally following her. I actually had this happen to me once. Did I ever tell you that? At the U of
No.
A? Yeah, when we were students, I was walking at night from my little apartment by the U of A and trying to get my car, which was way down the street, and this car started following at the pace of my walking, which is a little unusual. And I was so creeped out about it that right when I came to like a big bush, I stopped walking and the car stopped. And I was like, huh? And then I hear through the window, where'd she go? And I was like so freaked out because it was like 10 o'clock at night that I just turned and ran back. I was like, forget my car. I ran back home, got home safe. But yeah, that happened.
Fuck. It is
Yeah.
so difficult being a woman. I've never had to contend with that ever.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that. That's why, yeah, you don't go out after dark, you stay in. Although it sucks, we should just tell these guys to don't go out at night and harass
Well,
people, but
yeah,
life is
you
life.
should we should tell men not to be creepy and rapey. We
Yeah, yeah.
that probably get the job done faster.
All right, so now he's brought the prostitute back to where are they now? Is this Paul
Oh,
Allen's place?
yeah, I think this might be Paul out because it looks completely different from the other place, and he's drugging them.
Oh, so did he kill Paul Allen in his own house?
I oh yeah, I
Okay.
I think this is a woman that he might know from some other context, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
so someone from his network, right? So there's
Yeah,
two women here. You got this. Clearly, she's more w well off of a different economic socio class than
yeah.
the woman that he just got from the street. And that poor woman, she's just sitting there kind of listening to these people be bored. Like another thing too, that in The Great Gatsby, rich people are boring, right? The
Yeah,
idea that they do nothing. Okay.
yeah. It's
So this is taking the last three-way scene and elevating it. So we're in a similar situation. Of course, it cannot be a repetition of what just happened. Something has to happen, which is why anytime I watch movies like this and you kind of see yourself seeing some cycling back, you're like, okay, it would be really lazy plot device if like the same thing happened again. So something new is going to happen here, an elevation of the stakes. Um, Okay, he just said you're at Paul Allen's. She is at Paul Allen's. So now they're in Paul
yeah.
Allen's living room.
Hmm.
I feel kind of bad that I keep mixing up where they're supposed to be. And I've seen this movie several times and it just I don't know if it's my fault or if this is intentional, if we're supposed to feel this way right now. The
You should
ambiguity of it
you should
all.
ask Eric if he knows anyone like Patrick Bateman.
Oh. Oh yeah. So my husband Eric works with New Yorkers. Like, maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
All right. So now they're drinking, he's getting these girls drunk. This poor he's trying to kind of hint at getting a three-way going. Um and it seems like this woman who kind of plays back with him, she feels
Mhm.
like she's on more equal footing with him than this poor woman that he hired. Christy, there she is. Her name's Christy.
And she is just obviously not having a good time at all. Like,
Yes.
but he is drugging her, so that might change soon.
Is that what happened? He put drugs in the drinks?
Yeah.
Okay. And does he do that to okay, so now yeah, they're both
I
very
think he
into
did
this
that.
now. All right. So now we've got some girl on girl action, and Patrick Bateman starts talking about Whitney Houston. Perfect. He says four number one singles. I think that's what he said. And and she's
There's
making fun of him.
there's
Huh?
a whole chapter in the book titled Whitney Houston.
Really?
Like,
Did you
yeah,
read it? You got to
yeah,
that? Okay.
yeah. He has a kind of a love affair with Whitney Houston, which I found surprising,
Interesting.
given his other beliefs.
Yeah. Proclivities towards racism. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Alrighty. So now he is going on and on about the philosophies and the ideas that he sees from the music. Um, and these poor girls, they're definitely drugged or high on life. Something's going on with them, and it's
So
going to segue towards a sex scene that is uh, an elevate. Something bad's going to happen to them.
his his like constant or seemingly constant diatribes about music. Do you think that is something he actually feels, or do you think it is something that is part of the persona that he wants to present?
That's a good question because part of me feels like Okay, if we're gonna say that he is a psychopath, then I feel like he does a lot of masking and music, I wonder, is one way where he feels like he can connect to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, so it's almost like a demonstration of like, look how human I am. Um, but clearly he's detached from human emotion because he always brings it up at the most inappropriate times.
Hmm.
Anyway, okay, so now the sex scene has evolved into a murder scene, and Christy starts running around the apartment and she starts seeing this horrific like transformation of the apartment. There's bodies everywhere. There's words written on the wall in blood, and now he's chasing after her with a chainsaw in tennis shoes.
Yeah.
Oh, and he tries to eat her. He bites her at
Yeah.
least, and she kicks him in the face.
Like one
There's
of
a
his favorite movies from Texas Chainsaw Massacre that was playing earlier in the show.
oh, good catch. He's pissed that she kicked him in the face. All right, she's running, running, running. You think she's made it. She has zero blood on tracking on the ground though. You'd think that maybe she would have left some marks, but that's what's always so
Yeah.
interesting about these scenes is that just like him dragging the body, and it seems like he's not carrying a body, and now here
Hmm.
she is covered in blood, but she's not leaving blood on anything.
And
Here,
she's screaming and pounding on everyone's door, and no one's like, maybe that's a commentary on New York that no one cares, or just the 80s in general that no one cares.
yes.
He's running naked through an apartment with a chainsaw.
Yep.
Some people are gonna at least tell him to shut the fuck up.
There's got there. How is it possible there's no one else on the stairwell too in a place as
Yeah.
dense as New York? I mean, maybe that's possible in a yuppie apartment. Okay, so what I love about this scene is that there's clearly some camera work to film this, especially right here. He gets her with the chainsaw at the bottom of the stairwell, and she's lying on the ground. But look how massive she is, right? So, I think I've seen behind the scenes shots of this. It's a model upstairs, and you got
Oh
the
yeah.
real her, and but it's kind of a cool choice that they make, just visually. Movie
Mhm.
magic. I love movie magic. All right, now he's drawing her body in a very cartoon. He's a shitty drawer,
Yeah, he's like a 5-year-old.
and he's drawing it almost like they're at the macaroni grill. He's drawing it on the tablecloth, and while they're
With his
eating.
girlfriend there.
Reese Witherspoon is so funny. I think she plays this role so well. This whole time that I'm watching this movie, I remember the first time, I'm so scared for her because you
Mhm.
watch him do all these terrible things to women, and she's just there, like within
Completely
reach.
oblivious. Ignorance is bliss, I guess.
And then he breaks up with her, and then that's what I worried about is that I'm like, he can definitely break up with her by just killing her, but he doesn't,
Yeah.
and she doesn't hear him. He's like, it's over, it's over. Why do you think he's breaking up with her? Do you think he's just tired of her? Like, why?
Yeah, I don't like I don't know honestly. Like it just seems like maybe this is the first inkling that we have that he has just had enough of the yuppie scene that he's trying to assert some sort of individuality.
Yeah, especially because he's killing them off, right? So a
Yeah.
disconnect.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so his world's kind of crumbling a little bit. He is undoing the foundation that he was introduced to us as having, right? So his friends, his fiance. I think it's funny when he breaks up with her and she starts loudly crying. You're not terribly important to me, he tells her. And then she just starts sobbing, which I feel is a manipulative tactic.
Maybe she's worse than him. Who
Yeah,
knows?
they're all kind of terrible, right?
Yeah.
Like, is she really even crying here? She's not. Like, she's got dry eyes.
You
And I
should
think
just yell like,
she's crying clearly to like get people to stare. It makes him uncomfortable, and now he's leaving. And she completely drops the act and asks, "Where are you going?" No tears in the eyes, and he's got to go return some videotapes.
of course. I have used that in the past couple weeks for whenever I wanted to get out of a place. It goes over well.
All right, we've got this beautiful shot of New York, him walking through, and this gorgeous coat. I do like the way they're dressed in this movie. Beautiful
Pea,
camel coat, the
pea
leather
coats
gloves.
and pea coats and trench coats. That's something they should just, should
Hmm.
always be in style.
All right, now Patrick is starting to really depart reality because he's trying to get money from an ATM and he sees a kitten. He picks up the kitten and the ATM beeps and says, "Feed me a stray cat."
Yeah.
And it's like he considers it. Oh, and then he gets a gun out of nowhere and is going to shoot the cat and how that's going to feed. Oh, and then he shoots her. Okay, so now um we are, let me check where we are real quick.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, we're at the climax. We're in the Act 3 climax. Um he kind of seems to not care about anything at this point as far
Mhm.
as the structure that he had before. He's
So
trying, go ahead.
the first time I saw this, I thought like this has to be a dream because it is just so it is like so out there that
Uh-huh.
like no one could see this actually happening, and then you go back to normal life.
Yeah. So he shoots an old lady. The police are magically just there, and seem to be chasing something. He tries to break into vehicles and they all like the alarms go off. Now he's in a shootout confrontation with the police with a gun that I don't remember them ever showing before, which is interesting because usually Chekhov's gun is you show a gun at the beginning of the movie, it's got to go off in the third act. But do you recall seeing a gun?
Not before he pointed at the kitten.
Okay. And then he has a huge movie car
Yeah,
explosion.
it's like he doesn't even understand how his gun exploded a cop car.
All right, now he's running and let's see, is he going to Paul Allen's apartment? I don't remember.
I think he's going to his office.
He's going to his office. Okay. He sees the signing, the guard, and he just shoots him because, you know, like might as well shoot them all, I guess, at this point.
Yeah,
Having a complete mental breakdown, leaving a trail of violence in his wake.
yeah, like you do.
That janitor's so lucky. Oh, wait, no, no, no. Just kidding. The janitor's not lucky. He is about to leave. The janitor appears. He used a turnstile to come back around and shoot the janitor.
It's slapstick comedy at this point.
It's, yeah. All right, now he's in a different building that looks just like the other. I honestly thought, didn't, I'm like, where's the dead guard? Where's the janitor? It looks exactly the same in my opinion. Okay, so now we have a new guard and he approaches and takes out not the gun.
Like, did he kill the first guard just because he accidentally grabbed the gun first?
I don't know. Or he's like, shoot, wrong building. He got his own
Yeah.
building confused. He's in the wrong building. So he's like, F you, and
Yeah.
shoots that guard.
The buildings are all the same.
They are all
Like
the same.
another instance of the conformity.
All right, so now he's in his office, and now there's a helicopter involved, which is, I mean, it's very thrilling from a viewer's perspective. This is awesome to
Mhm.
watch. And now here, I think this is one of those big moments. So the
Yeah. He calls,
helicopter has a light
calls
on
his
him.
lawyer. Yeah, and he calls his lawyer.
He calls his lawyer, which we've never met before, right?
Yeah. No, no, no. But although if you're as a lawyer, generally you'd call them before, you know,
Is
all
that
of this
so?
happens.
Okay.
But just when you're being pursued by the cops and have just killed like three or four people, um, you know, it's harder to defend from that. But
Yeah. So you're telling me, as a lawyer, Mike, you would prefer it if your client called you and to tell you that they were going to kill somebody?
and I would advise them against it.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so he is confessing to his lawyer about all the murders he's done, including Paul Allen,
Hmm.
all the women. Um, his body is dissolving in a bathtub in Hell's Kitchen.
And he couldn't even remember the number of people that he killed. He says about 40 or something. And like once again, it calls into question his reliableness as a narrator.
Mm,
Like of all the things he remembers, of all the like Armani suit with the Giorgio Sassoon hair or whatever, like
that's
you'd think
very
he'd
true.
remember, you know, yeah.
Oh, now he confesses to eating some of their brains. So now we're going into cannibalism, which is I feel like a whole nother level of murder.
Mhm.
Okay, so he confesses this whole thing and he's leaving a voice message. So It's evidence.
Yeah.
And frankly, all of this happened because he tried to stuff a cat into an ATM.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I
Okay.
mean, yeah.
Okay. So now this is such a great performance by Christian Bale. He's so good. He's so intense.
Hmm.
Um, but hey, great performance. And at this point, as a viewer, what are you thinking? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's
Well,
going to, get in trouble?
like I said, at this point, I was sure that it was a dream. I was
Okay.
absolutely positive because I was like he's gonna wake up any second now because there's no way that like oh the police just waved this off if it actually happened. But I guess
Yeah.
he waited out the waited out the cops. I don't know.
Well, it is funny because from a logical standpoint, we're now in the morning and the
Yeah.
cops never followed him up the building.
Yeah.
Um, Wait, this is his house. Okay. So now I know.
But
The
we don't know if he was in his house before. Like
Okay.
it looked like it definitely looked like he was in his office.
Okay. So then anytime he's with the telescope, that's his place. So when he brought over the girl, the innocent
Hmm.
girl, it was at his place. That's when his fiance called.
Ah,
But then when
that would
he
make
was
sense.
having a three-way with the redhead and Christy, the prostitute, where was that? It was here. It was Paul Allen's apartment because here he is going back to Paul Allen's apartment right now.
Yeah.
So he wakes up the next morning. Sometimes somehow he got from his office to his home, um, and he hasn't been arrested yet. Nothing is happening, and he goes back to Paul Allen's house. He puts on a mask to walk in there, and it's not how he left it.
Hmm.
And it turns out the apartment is empty, and it's a realtor is walking people through. Right? Like he looks through the
Yeah.
closet. There's no bodies. Yes.
So I've been told that New York real estate is pretty brutal. Like you have to jump on something as soon as it's open. So
Oh.
I'm assuming that e even if they knew that all the murders took place here, they'd still want the building, want the apartment.
Interesting. Okay. So at this point, Paul Allen is still not there, regardless of whether or not like he killed him. The place is
Mhm.
unoccupied. So I guess the question is, was it ever Paul Allen's place?
Yeah, and all the bodies are gone.
Uh-huh. I find it
Like
interesting.
these
Sorry.
are bodies that he just saw like what a day ago.
Yeah, the night before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so then, okay, if we were to try to apply logic to this, I am guessing he saw this apartment, whether or not it was Paul Allen's, and used it as a staging place whether or not for actual crimes or for fantasizing about crimes.
Hmm.
But then you find out that Paul Allen like is doesn't occupy the place. I think he ended up moving away, or I think we're gonna find that out later.
Yeah. Well, I think later, like he might have just be on vacation or something. Or yeah, you're right. He might have moved away.
Yeah.
But like obviously, like something happened to the stuff in the apartment and the bodies in the apartment. It seems like right now that the realtor d knows, like at least from Patrick's perspective, that she knows what happened, that
Mm.
he is a killer, and she probably had to clean up the bodies to save the resale value or the rental value or whatever.
It certainly seems that way with the amount of renovations. That's what was going on in there.
Yeah.
Okay, I love this performance by Christian Bale because it's like he goes from one extreme of this, polished yuppie performance to this unhinged, falling apart performance as he's calling from the payphone to Jean, his secretary.
And you can see it like it just in the way his body works. Like he's like bent over, like talking on the phone, like n not proud, nothing upright.
Yes. So he's losing his mind, And now I have to wonder, is he a psychopath or is he just a man with severe mental health issues?
I mean, they're not mutually exclusive, but
I guess just different categories of it, a different flavoring.
yeah.
Okay, so he's having a breakdown. He's screaming at her, poor thing, and then he
Hmm.
hangs up on her. And this is when she feels inspired to go through his office. And then I'm answering the question I've been asking this whole time, which is, what does he do in there? Um, we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so he's grabbed his briefcase, which feels very empty. Um, all right, so she goes and approaches his
Mhm.
desk and she starts rifling through and she discovers some pretty disturbing things.
Hmm.
What does she find, Mike?
Uh, PB. She's fine.
She find, all right, he finds his Patrick Bateman's leather notebook,
Hmm.
and it's his calendar, his agenda, his schedule, his schedule.
And
Um,
and then the drawings he's made in his schedule of,
mhm.
you know,
And there's nothing in there too. Like it's blank except for his social,
hmm.
meetings, and then um,
There was a drawing with a knife, someone and going towards someone's face.
yes, very violent depictions and is very childish. And that's actually kind of funny too, how childlike his drawing skills are.
Yeah, he is a 5-year-old, really.
Okay, he's a mess. He's showing up to lunch um, with his coworker friends, and he looks definitely not himself. He's sweaty.
Hmm.
He's on edge. He's a little manic.
And you know what's weird? Like in the book, he's like 26 at this point. He does not look tw like Christian Bale does not look 26.
No, no. Do you ever feel like, especially as a kid, looking at our parents of this generation, that they seem so much older in their 20s?
There's a few you know theories about that like a lot like people of our age just generally have healthier lifestyles and know how to take care of themselves more. There's no less smoking, more exercise, more, eating right. Um, and also hairstyles.
Mm,
Hairstyles is a
yeah,
big thing. But
yeah.
yeah, they people people definitely do look older in older movies. You know.
All
That
right. So
that could be
now, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just gonna say that could be a 26-year-old by 80s standards. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Well, he's got a good head of hair. All right. So now Patrick Bateman's talking to his lawyer, right?
Mhm.
And he's referencing the voicemail he sent them, but then the guy is mistaking him for someone else that isn't Patrick Bateman.
Mhm.
And this
Which
is where I'm like dumb. I'm like, oh my God, no, who and what is going on now? So what are your thoughts? So he goes, I did it, Carnes. That's what Patrick Bateman said. I killed him. I'm Patrick Bateman. And I think it's
so
really interesting that he doesn't know who he is, but he's supposed to be his lawyer?
yeah, yeah. And once again, this goes to the whole culture where none of them are they're all conformists. They're all the same person essentially. The, like and at this point we don't know if Patrick Bateman is just insane or if the lawyer is actually just doesn't care who or
Uh,
what Patrick Bateman is and is mistaking him for another person.
I feel like Patrick Bateman doesn't actually have a lawyer. He
Ah.
just decided this guy that maybe he's a lawyer and his, place of employment was his. And
Which happens a lot. Like
does that happen to you?
no, 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 it happened to Donald Trump when he thought that the White House counsel was his counsel.
Oh, okay. 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 So he is okay. Now we're finding out that the lawyer doesn't believe that he killed Paul Allen because he, in fact, had lunch with Paul Allen in London. So
Hmm.
we learned that Paul Allen did actually go overseas to London and is still alive. And that's where you can kind of come to the assumption that Patrick Bateman mistook these real life events and warped them in his brain.
And then we see the secretary finding his once again, fifth, like 5-year-old drawings of murder.
Yep, of murders, of specifically to women. And this
Yeah.
poor secretary is traumatized as it gets worse and worse and worse. So then the question is, did any of those murders actually happen, or was he just thinking those scenes as he was drawing these things?
Either way, she's going to call HR.
Yeah, I should hope so. Did they even have an HR back then?
Probably not a good one.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now we're back with Patrick Bateman. We're flipping back and forth between the scene of him in this gentleman. I don't know if it's a gentleman's club at this point, but there is a lot of dudes, and his secretary going through his stuff, and he's coming to the realization that all most of the events that we've seen in this movie is not, in fact, true or at least reliable.
Hmm.
And I feel like he's having a bit of a disassociative moment as we suddenly pay attention to the news.
And of course, Ronald Reagan is on the screen.
Mm. All right. So now they're talking about reservations. Are they going to talk about Dorsey again? I don't know. All right. His friends are really boring,
Hmm.
and Patrick Bateman starts laughing.
I mean, he probably finds his friends more boring than we do. Like,
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he finds the world boring, and that's why he keeps trying to stir up things by killing people,
mhm.
at least in his mind. Okay. Where what is the point of this scene?
it. I think it's just like he tried to get out. He tried to confess. He tried to, do whatever he could. And like he says right above his shoulder, this is not an exit.
Oh, nice catch.
He is back to where he started, and he can't get away even if he wanted to.
Interesting. In a weird way, it's like a messed up hero's journey because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
hero always comes back to where they were, a changed man, but back nonetheless.
And he is not changed.
He is.
He is the same person as when he started.
Okay, so this is links to an episode that will come out after this one, I think, because the way I'm timing the releases, where I talk about antiheroes. And that
Mhm.
is one of the differences between a classic hero and an antihero is that many times the antihero is not going to experience a transformation. Although you can argue that he has a realization about his outlook on life and his mental stability. Um, but yeah, he will probably still continue to fantasize about murdering people.
Yeah, yeah.
He goes, he says, there's no catharsis. My punishment continues. And I can't read as fast as the subtitles let me. No new knowledge can be extracted from my telling. This confession has meant nothing.
Exactly.
So nothing has changed.
Yeah. It's it, yeah, it's just like uh such a good movie.
How do you feel? How do you feel finishing this movie from a story progression, um, discovering at the end that it kind of doesn't matter?
So the point of the movie is not Patrick Bateman. It's not whether or not he committed the murders. The point of the movie is that the society he's in does not care whether or not he committed the murders.
Hmm,
Like as long as he keeps, dressing like one of them, talking like one of them, sounding like one of them, going to all the same places to eat that he does that they do. Um, he's just Patrick Bateman, who might as well be Paul Allen, who might as well be Lewis, who might as well be whoever.
that's true.
That's my perception of the story.
And location wise, it all blends together. You could, you could be in one office building that looks just like your office building, not the office building, um, and in your own place, but maybe someone else's place shot different way. I just the ambiguity being so intentional to kind of confuse even where you are, and it takes a couple rewatches before you even kind of understand where you are. And even now, I still don't know, and I'm sure I frustrated a bunch of eagle-eyed listeners. They're like, Vickie, we're clearly in Patrick Bateman's place versus Paul Allen's, but I'm sorry I failed you all.
Yeah, and at least I have the excuses I've been drinking. So
There you go. I do not have that excuse. Ugh. Anyway, oops. Oh well. All
next time.
right, Mike, thank you so much for joining me with this rewatch. I thought this was a good first time to try this because the movie isn't that long,
Yeah.
and it's kind of ripe for analysis. Well, what were your thoughts?
I, for one thing, I can't wait to finish the book, and I don't think the ending is likely to be too different.
Hmm.
Um, I really liked this movie. It was succinct. There was not a wasted scene.
Hmm.
Um, and it I saw this as kind of a companion piece to Bright Lights Big City as that I referenced earlier. Uh, it's iconic. It's iconic.
You didn't watch this movie until recently, right?
Yeah, my wife actually introduced me. Well, not introduced me, but was the first person to actually get me to sit down and watch the movie end to end. Because I'd seen parts before. Like you can't go through law school without seeing the business card scene. Someone is going to show it to you.
Actually, I was introduced to the business card scene in college. I don't remember what the context was, but they played that scene.
Yeah. I guess it's just how they do. I don't
I
know.
just, yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Mike. Any final remarks before we conclude this very long but hopefully fun episode?
Um, so if you have read the books, know that Patrick Bateman's taste in alcohol is completely plebeian. He drinks blended Scotch whiskey, J&B, if I remember right. And I have been enjoying Von Trapp, good Vermont brewer,
Okay.
um, and also a Vermont mead. And yeah, Golden Rule mead. So good times on them if you're ever in Vermont and want to check it out. Also, pugs. Pugs.
Oh, good Missy. Missy's a good doggy.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my shout out. Okay.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much for joining me this week for Speculative Sandbox. Happy Halloween, everybody. Hopefully you had a chance to watch with us, or maybe you'll watch at some other time. And if you have any other further analysis that you'd like to tell me about American Psycho, you can find me on socials, Instagram, TikTok, Speculative Sandbox. You can also visit my website at vickielon.com. Mike, do you want anyone to follow you, or you're like perfectly fine with
I
your
am perfectly
anonymity
fine.
online?
I have an Instagram, Crawfo, EMCRAWFO. I sometimes post, you know, photos that I took that I thought were particularly good. Although I haven't done that in many, many months.
Well, they
So,
are good.
look, no, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next week. Bye.